Okay, I think that's us. I think we'll just get started. There's a couple more people joining, but we'll just start there. So, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our document management with SharePoint session. My name's Zopash, and I'm on the marketing team here at bridewell. It's great turnout this morning, so thank you so much for being on this call with us. Hopefully, you'll get a lot of value out of the session today. So before we get started, it's just a quick note before, just to make you aware that you are being recorded. So just so you're aware, and we'll be sending out a copy of the recording and the slides out after the event. So, for example, if you have to drop off early or if there's someone that couldn't make the call, you can share the resources with them later on. So we'll send that follow-up out. You'll notice as well that you're on mute, but we do encourage you to use the chat function to ask any questions. We do have a dedicated Q&A at the end where you can ask any questions that you might have, and we'll do our best to get them answered throughout the session. So that's kind of the main housekeeping points done. So I will now pass it on to our team of experts, Graham McLean and Andrew Moore, who will take you through the session. So thanks again, and hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Thanks, Zopash. Yeah, well, thanks for joining us this morning. You see there's a reasonable amount of you, which is good. It's good to have a decent audience. And yeah, thanks for coming along to our session on effective document management with Microsoft SharePoint. So I'll kick off. What we're looking at going to cover today, we're going to cover a wee bit about the kind of risks around poor document management. We're going to look at collaboration and document management with SharePoint as well. We'll look at the kind of pros and cons of how you store and categorize documents within SharePoint, and we'll look at the security and permissions settings as well. And then we'll finish off with some bits around kind of automation, Microsoft Copilot, having a wee look at that and what that can offer, touching on SharePoint Premium, and some of the kind of advanced features that can offer in the AI Builder section as well. And then we'll finish off by looking at Microsoft Viva. And then as Zopash mentioned, there's this kind of Q&A session at the end as well. As she said, feel free to post questions as we go along into the chat. My colleague Andy Moore is going to be going through most of this today, and I'll be on the chat just manning any questions and answering any questions that you've got as well. So just a bit about bridewell first of all. We're based in Glasgow. We've got over 40 staff and growing. We established in 2002, so we've been going for just over 20 years. One of Scotland's most accredited Microsoft partners as well. So across our business, there's kind of 4 key business areas for us. There's the modern workplace business area, which I head up, and Andrew's in the team there. We focus on improving kind of employee productivity, and we're really looking at quite a lot of the Microsoft 365 stack. So looking at things like SharePoint, looking at things like Power Platform, Dynamics 365. So everything that's kind of built on top of that, Office 365 kind of suite. We have a managed IT service and support area as well. So that looks at, security, infrastructure, kind of cloud services. So moving to Azure, managed IT, managing all your devices and keeping them secure. And then we have an analytics and applications area as well. So that deals with supporting and developing large-scale bespoke software solutions. And it also covers kind of business intelligence and data projects as well. So building out data platforms, looking at understanding how you can use your data better, and a lot of integration type work with different systems as well. And then our fourth part is a suite of products that we've got in the water sector, based around water utilities. So for forecasting bills and for billing for the water utility sector. So across all those functions, we review and we advise on the kind of best options we can implement solutions for you, and then we provide ongoing IT support as well. So the main aim really is to help and put in technology solutions that are going to help kind of improve your business in the long run. We're a Microsoft Gold partner, and have swapped over to the new kind of certified solutions partner accreditations, of which we've got 4 out of the 6, working to just get the last 2 of them as well. We're a Microsoft Content Services preferred partner, one of 26 worldwide. So what that gives us is it gives us some access to the Microsoft engineering team in Redmond, and we get to see the kind of early things that are happening around like SharePoint Premium, Viva, some of the things that are happening with SharePoint. So it's quite interesting as well to get in around that quite early on. We're also ISO 9001 and 27001 certified, and we're Cyber Essentials Plus certified as well. So just some customers, you can see that the selection there, kind of across private and public sectors and across a number of different industry verticals, such as manufacturing, housing, national government, NHS, events. So a right mix of customers, and what that gives us is, because we're not kind of concentrating on one specific sector or one specific vertical, we find quite often the same challenges are coming up across different industry verticals as well, and we can quite often be talking to customers about challenges that other customers in other industry sectors have had as well, and how they've solved that and how that can be fixed as well. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to my colleague Andy, who's going to take you through this section. And yeah, as I say, if there's any questions as you go along, happy to, if you put them in the chat, I'll answer them.
All right, thanks, Graham. As Graham said, my name's Andy Moore. I'm a SharePoint consultant here at Bridgewell, and I'll just make a start. I'm going to take you through the security and some of the document control features in SharePoint. So why bother with document management? There's some common risks, and there's a lot of threats as well. The traditional risks with a lack of document management is people can't find what they're looking for. You lose or misplace documents. You have things are accidentally deleted, and things are accidentally sent to the wrong customer, and security and compliance issues. It can lead to a loss of productivity and profitability, and there'll be some missed opportunities and growth potential. In more recent years, we get the sense that the worries have moved more towards 2 things: being hacked and data theft. And leaks, accidental data leakage, if you like, particularly of private data, people's personal data. So that's become a growing concern, and more and more document management is becoming about risk management rather than just making things easy to find. So I'll talk a little bit about collaboration and document management in SharePoint, and we'll start off with getting kind of basics right, getting a good foundation in place, and how to increase control and therefore reduce risk. How we suggest people always start is by restructure your large libraries. Let's say you have an HR folder which is huge, with all the HR different topics for HR and different activities are under that one folder. We strongly recommend people think about what are the risks in each of those folders, and they should restructure to sites, separate them into different sites and libraries accordingly. Things like employee records, we would always say that becomes a separate site with its own security because of the volume of confidential and potentially embarrassing to an employee data they have in there. Also the CVs, your CV library, a little bit different, but there's an enormous amount of personal information about members of the public in a CV library, so we suggest a separate library for that as well. And I'm going to do a little bit of a live demo later on to show you how that works in SharePoint. We do also encourage our customers to lower their risks of data loss and data escaping the company by working in a way where the document stays in the cloud the whole time. So you create your file in SharePoint, you review it in SharePoint, you approve it and publish it in SharePoint, and you share it in SharePoint, all from the one location. We're going to show you how that can kind of work as well just after these first few slides. Storing and categorizing documents. Like I said, creating a structure using sites and libraries rather than folders and subfolders increases security. You can still put security on subfolders and on individual files. The problem when you do this is that you very quickly lose sight of where all your nuanced security is. So you can't easily see who has permissions to what folder in terms of reporting permissions. It's a lot easier if you're using groups and applying groups to sites or libraries, and really that's about it for security if you want to follow best practice. So a lot of you be thinking, if you can't have all your folders in one folder structure, how do you retain a kind of a logical navigation within your site? We would recommend you create a kind of a navigation layer using the SharePoint intranet user experience. So you create your navigation within your hub navigation or within the pages of the sites themselves. So you're building your navigation rather as web pages rather than through folders. You can also use columns and categories to filter your documents, fill in metadata and this kind of stuff. Now, quite a lot of people in SharePoint are starting to use retention and deletion policies. These are pretty good for documents. You want to keep a document for, let's say it's a financial record. You need to keep it for 7 years. You can set a retention policy on the finance site first, so all documents within the finance site will be held for 7 years. You can then, if you want, automatically delete it. Word of warning, when you follow the defaults when you're setting up a retention policy in SharePoint, the default will allow you to, if you don't change any of the settings, it'll allow you to set up a single retention policy for your entire SharePoint estate. So if you follow all the defaults, you will end up in a situation where no one will be able to delete anything from your SharePoint environment. It's pretty easy to reverse. You just need to delete the policy, but if you're a larger organization, it can lead to a lot of chaos quite quickly. The reports and the dashboards can give you an idea of sprawl. You can see where the documents are, what's being stored and what's being saved. It can give you an idea of how much content volume you have and how much content volume you'll have in the future. And they're also very good at preventing data loss. Sensitivity labels, not to be confused with watermarks. This isn't going to put a highly confidential stamp in the corner of your document. Sensitivity labels are are in the background. They are applied to, we have them set up. So we have before we can send an email, for example, we have to put a sensitivity label on the email. It's either internal, it's public, it's confidential, or it's highly sensitive. And you can customize these labels to whatever your company's needs are. The other thing it's very good at is that it's I don't know if you can see the graph, but this graph is a report from the sensitivity label. It's labeled content. It describes how it's being used or shared. The light purple is copied to files that are copied to USB. The dark is uploaded to a third-party cloud, and the bright pink is files that have been shared externally. This is really good for tracking your data, and particularly I like that third one. That's a good way of tracking what files are leaving the organization, which is something that we try to avoid now. You can also, when you apply a label, you can also set the label up so it also controls access. So if a person is not part of a group associated with that label, if that label is used on a file, they can't see that file, which is quite a new feature, which is going to be really good. Managing security and permission settings. So we always recommend you move away from subfolders and items, putting permissions on those, and instead consider creating security groups or Office 365 groups. This will be a task for your administrators, your system administrators, so probably through an IT service desk request. But it's quite a good idea, because self-service security, I think if people have used SharePoint for many years, they'll probably agree that self-service security hasn't been a massive success in SharePoint. It's caused a lot of problems for a lot of the larger organizations. So what we recommend is you create a security group, and if you create a security group, you can apply different features to that security group. You can monitor it, you can audit it and stuff like that. So like I said before, and we'll show you a bit of demo of this later. If you segregating your high security content is very important. What we'd recommend is that you move your highest sensitivity content to a separate site, and you give it a dedicated security group that you've created in Azure AD. This limits the possibility of there being accidental access being granted. Like I've already mentioned, avoid applying permissions to folders and individuals' files. Don't reuse groups that have a high-risk content. Let's say you have a group for your proposals teams and they get access to the bids. You don't want to reuse that proposals team group anywhere else, because you might find people are adding people to that group in order to give them access to other content, and you're inadvertently giving access to their bids. There are advanced features you can use for security groups. You can set up an alert someone, a manager or someone in the IT department, when someone is added to an extremely highly sensitive group, like accessing the annual reports before they're sent out at the end of the year or something like that. Permissions. It's for long-term, easy to give yourself an easy life long term. It's keep your permission structure simple. Apply common navigation and branding across the sites, and we talk about follow the least privilege principle. That is the idea that you give people the minimum amount of access. I would say you should do that, but before you apply security to content, consider whether or not it needs it at all, because you don't want to apply too much security complexity. If your files can be open to the company, it kind of helps for collaboration if you leave them open. And like I mentioned, each site should be kept separate. It should be very clear it has access to it. You should have an intranet layer to your SharePoint site, which is very open to everyone. And then within that, you should have beneath that, you should have your more secure team sites. So governance, quite important to plan it from the start. Plan your groups and think about who your groups are, then create them in Azure, apply them to both SharePoint sites and teams. Then you're going to have clear ownership and clear permissions. Try not to outsource kind of security to other departments. If you can, get the IT department to do it, because that means you retain a little bit of control. I'm going to try and share. So I'm going to try and give you a little bit of an online demo of some of this now. I'm just going to share my screen. So in a few seconds, I've got a little demo intranet that I can show you some of these. Something we've talked about in the slides. I'm going to show you as a live demo. So. And first of all, the restructure of content. My example is an HR department. When a lot of companies migrated, they did it around about generally between 2008 and 2012. We all worked on things called I drives, N drives, and O drives. It was a shared network drive. It normally had a letter. It was named after the letter it was mapped to on the network drive. Then they kind of broke each department up in the iDrive, and they moved each department into a SharePoint site where each department got a huge document library with all the stuff from their network drive in there. This means there's a mixed bag of content that everyone can access to highly confidential content. So what we're suggesting is that people move away from this single folder structure and they move into something that's a little more like this. This isn't actually the structure, but it's just like a layout of how I've set out my sites. I've split my sites up into 4 different categories. Open to all employees. I'm going to make this one site, and there's going to be 4 document libraries in that site: training and learning, HR forms and templates, policies and mental health support, and other stuff like that. Then there's going to be the HR team members site. That is also going to be a single site with the employee support, and I'm still going to have that general HR team documents folder in there, because we need somewhere where people can just do their day-to-day work without forcing them to get buried in kind of moving files around in it and that kind of administration. Then I've separated off the recruitment team, particularly because of the amount of public personal data we have in the applications and CVs, which is going to be a site of its own. So you're going to have the recruitment site, and then as a subsite to that, you're going to have the applications and CV site, that's going to have very limited access, and I'm going to put a deletion policy on those CVs. So after 2 years, every CV we receive in the company is going to be deleted automatically. And then the final site, the most high security site, is the senior HR managers and directors site. This is going to contain stuff like employee records and disciplinaries. This is going to be broken up into 3 separate sites. And the employee records, obviously, and disciplinaries with that highest security on it again. So this is how we kind of suggest you, if you want to restructure your data, and then we suggest we apply features to that data according to needs. So I've got a little page here where my information security team has mapped out a few key libraries that we need to look at. The first one, the high security, is employee records. There's a lot of risk here: GDPR exposure, confidential data, personal data. It's highly sensitive. So we have a different number, different controls in place there. Dedicated website, sensitivity labels applied. We have a little feature called Who's Viewed This feature, which you can switch on. It allows you to see exactly who's viewed any particular file quite simply, without going into the admin center, without auditing and reporting and stuff like that. It has its own security group and retention policies. 6 years, I think, for employee data. Candidate CV is slightly different because this isn't so much company sensitive information, but it's public sensitive information. So the features dedicate around GDPR. We put a very tight security around it. We can check who's deleted stuff, who's viewed it and edited it. Retention policy a lot shorter, so we're not holding on to it forever. And it also keeps all your CVs in one place. So if there's any freedom of information requests, you know exactly where that person's information is. Finance monthly reporting, that's similar to the employee information. But it's more around financials, sensitive data, confidential data that hasn't been made public yet, without a risk to it can't be on the public markets too early. So things like that as content approval, dedicated security groups, and version control and things like that. At the other end of the scale, we've got things like policy library and the form library. The documents still have to be controlled, so we have content approval and version control on there, but we don't have much in the way of security because we actually want people to read those documents, even though many of your employees probably don't, but we want them to. So a little bit on the collaboration side, I want to talk you through about how to work without leaving the cloud. I've created a fictional project reporting page where every month each project team posts their kind of project progress report, any kind of successes and threats that have come in. For this prototype, I've built the governance into the page, so you can see there's the warning on the top left about how to about you shouldn't be downloading these or sending it externally. And there's, to the left of that, there's instructions on how we create a new project report and how you share it with your manager. So what I've done is I've created a content type here, and a customized template which you can load straight from the library. So the idea with doing this is to make it convenient for the users, so they don't feel the need to. So I want to make it easier to do this than to download it, attach it, and send it to someone. So it's really about making it nice and easy for them. So I'm just going to do the 2024 March engineering report. Now, if I go back to that should auto save hopefully. So if I go back to my list, it should appear, and there it is. So my report has now appeared in the library, and I haven't had to download a template. I haven't needed to use my C drive or my desktop or anything like that. And when it comes to sending this to my manager or to the directors or to my colleagues to review or add to, I'm going to use this share feature right next to the document. This is going to share it with them from a security perspective, and it's going to send them a link, and they're going to open it straight from that link, and they're just going to continue to work on the document from this location, which means that once you complete that process, the entire document lifecycle has been completely self-contained. This file has never left the library it was created in. So and the last little bit about kind of is going to be about columns and metadata. I've got a company policy library here, and I've just added one column, which is the department column. And if you categorize it like this, you can categorize your document in more than one way. So normally you would just have folders and subfolders, which is, if you like, one dimension of how to categorize. By using this metadata, having a department column, I can create links on another page. If I just want to filter out, say, the human resources or the information technology policies, I can create a link that just shows them those policies for that information technology team. So this is similar to, many of you will have used views. You could use a view for this, but there's a limit on how many views you can use. So this is another way of doing that without reaching any of the SharePoint limitations. Right, I'm just going to go back to the slides. I think I need to stop sharing for a second, and then I'll just share the slides again. Sorry, just get us back to the slide we were at before. Okay, so automation. I'm not going to talk about everything that Power Automate does. I mean, it's huge. It's a subject in itself. I'm going to talk about the touch points between automation and document management. You probably have noticed in SharePoint you do have this. Do you want to apply document approval to a document library? So this is the basic out the box kind of workflow that you get with SharePoint. There's many others you can create though if you want to create custom workflows. Some of the examples would be scheduling revisions of control documents. So quite often with management system documents, companies are obliged to review policies on a review cycle. Every document has to be reviewed in less than 2 years. You could use a Power Automate flow to cycle that and send someone a notification or multiple people a notification when a document is ready to review. Using Teams to speed up approvals. At the moment, you probably get an email for your document approval notification. That's now moved into Teams, so people get a Teams message, and what you'll find is when they're approving documents through Teams messages, it's an awful lot faster. Also setting, you can extend the idea of retention and deletion policies. If you don't want to delete a file after a certain period of time, you can create a flow which archives the file for you, moves it to a more secure location, and stores it there where people can't see it and people can't search for it. Moving swiftly on, I'm going to talk a little bit about Microsoft Copilot, then I'm going to hand back to Graham. So what is Microsoft Copilot? So I asked Microsoft Copilot to describe Microsoft Copilot in 50 words, and this was its response. It can help you generate content. You ask it questions. You want it to generate some text for you, or it's good for summarizing. I wouldn't recommend you have it write your entire document. I certainly wouldn't recommend you have it write press releases or bids. What I do with it is I need to explain something, maybe a bit of technology or something like that in short terms, and I ask Copilot to write that explanation for me, and I put it into my document, but only as a paragraph or two or a section. So that's Copilot in Microsoft Word, for example. Copilot in PowerPoint will generate you an entire slide or an entire presentation if you ask it to. And Copilot in Teams is pretty good because that will do your meeting transcripts and stuff like that for you, and some of those tasks. It'll also write your meeting. We had it write up some meeting actions, so it can detect when someone's got an action, and it'll write up your actions for them and send it to you. We did it for a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and it was pretty accurate, so it went pretty well. I think at this point, I know that's quite a lot to get through, but I'm going to hand back to Graham. He's going to take you through some of the more complicated features like SharePoint Premium and Viva. So Graham, do you want to take control again, and I'll leave you to it?
Yeah, thanks for that, Andy. Yeah, I think just on the Copilot part as well, I think one of the things that Andy's been using it's been quite useful for has been if we're developing intranets and things and we're looking for content to put into placeholders, before organisations have reviewed it at the end of kind of sprints and things. We've been able to take certain bits of text for what departments do and expand on that and then put that in so that when we're actually showing the showing the site to them at the end of the sprint, it's got the full kind of content that would be in there anyway.
It's drastically reduced the time it takes us to build an intranet site just down to like an hour or two rather than a half a day or a day. It's been great.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, just moving on to some of the more kind of advanced features that are there. So we've got SharePoint, which everyone knows and, well, I was going to say loves, but a wee bit of a love-hate relationship maybe there with SharePoint. But we've now got SharePoint Premium as well. So as well as the kind of some of the AI builder tools that already existed. So SharePoint Premium really is the kind of a slightly more advanced kind of version of SharePoint, if you like. The way that that's licensed is it's kind of licensed in two separate sections. There's some features that you pay a wee bit more for, some of the kind of advanced security aspects, and then there's some of the features that are on a pay-as-you-go kind of model as well. So the SharePoint Premium features, I mean, some of the features that you get there is really the Copilot enabled in directly into SharePoint. So when you're now creating new pages, site authors can be able to kind of use the AI prompts for Copilot to be able to create a SharePoint site or to manage a SharePoint site or to get content within a SharePoint site. Some of the advanced security features that you have the ability to kind of block sites down to groups of users. So we'll be able to restrict the sites down to people not being able to see that site actually exists, and restrict that down just to one equivalent user. And then the automation, so bringing documents right into the kind of flow of work. So I'll go on and talk about this in a little bit. But that, if you've heard of SharePoint syntax before, then really this kind of SharePoint Premium, this automation and this document understanding bit is really the new name, if you like, for SharePoint syntax is some of the SharePoint Premium features. So what that means that you can do is you can bring things like part of the e-signatures, document understanding, contract review, statement of work type scenarios. You can bring all them into the flow of work. So if you've got documents that, as Andy was showing there, you're creating a highlight report, for example, if that then needs to go and be approved, it can go through an approval cycle using the Power Automate tools. If it then needs to be signed, then or approved, then that can go to be electronically signed again, just in the flow of work, so it never leaves SharePoint again. It's just being signed as part of the normal flow of work. So SharePoint syntax, as we've got defined there, is now reasonably recently moved to that kind of under that SharePoint Premium banner, if you like. Some of the things you can do here is you can allow it to read and categorize kind of forms and templates. You can pull information out of structured documents that you might already have. So some of the interesting use cases that we see are people who want to be able to say upload all their invoices into SharePoint and have a syntax SharePoint Premium basically extract all the information out of those invoices, so that can then be used to go and process the invoices. Same for kind of purchase orders, contracts, example. You could get things like contract value, contract end date. You can extract those fields out of it. And the way that this works now, it used to be more of you had to pay a license for it up front. But the way that it works now is they've moved this to a pay-as-you-go model. So it's tied to your Azure subscription. So you can actually use this if you've got, let's say, a couple of questions about, I've got SharePoint Plan 1, I've got Microsoft 365 Business Premium. If you have those, Plan 1 or Microsoft 365 Business Premium, they don't include, these syntax and SharePoint Premium tools. SharePoint Premium would be, so for the security part, SharePoint Premium would be an additional cost. But for these kind of syntax models and document understanding models, you can effectively just set that up and switch that on, and then use the kind of pay-as-you-go model tied to your Azure subscription, so that as you are putting documents into the repository and as you're kind of understanding them and running the model on them, then you're basically consuming some Azure resource, and then that just goes onto your Azure bill at the end of the day. Now, if you look at Microsoft, there's a big list of all the different prices of, whether you're looking at whether you're building a form or whether you are kind of understanding a form that's already there. There's different prices based on different models. So moving on to Microsoft Viva. So yeah, some of you may have heard the term Microsoft Viva bandied about as well. Really, again, that's an extension of, some of this is an extension of SharePoint. Some of it is just an extension of the kind of Office 365 tooling and Office 365 stack. It's really, to categorize it, you would say it's an employee experience platform. It's split into kind of 4 different areas, really. You've got the kind of communications and communities section. You've got an analytics and feedback section, a goal setting and management section, and a kind of learning and knowledge management section. So the way that this is licensed, again, some of this is free. So it comes with your Office 365 subscription, and some of this is additional SKUs. So I'll try and highlight the areas where it's free or it's additional as we go through. So looking at the communications in the communities section, first of all, you've got Viva Connections. So Viva Connections allows you to kind of extend your intranet out into Teams. So it makes it more native within Teams. You effectively, down the sidebar of Teams on the left-hand side, you get an icon for your intranet. You can access your intranet through Teams and you can see the pages there. Effectively, that's a kind of step 1, if you like, for enabling Viva Connections. But where the real power comes is if you have, say, hub sites set up or communication sites set up for each of your business areas, your business units, you can then create dashboards for them as well. And then what happens is if you go into Viva Connections in Teams and say you belong to the HR site, for example, you belong to the HR business unit, you can see a kind of personalized dashboard for everything that the HR area want you to be able to see. So that might be some tasks that you need to create. It might be some things that are waiting for you as part of a kind of automation process for you to approve. It might be some, kind of daily checks that you need to do. It might be some news that's there as well. So that's the type of thing to try and personalize it down to the area that you work, while still being able to see the full kind of intranet and all the news and everything that bubbles up as well. It's really useful, and obviously brings that kind of back to that business unit working as well. And these dashboards can all be created from the kind of hub and communication site aspect as well, and then brought into to Microsoft Teams. We're working with a couple of customers just now to do things like integrate into other technologies, so systems like Unit 4, third-party technologies like that, to try and get some of these dashboard task-based components and try and get them activated for them. We also have Viva Engage, which effectively, there's a wee bit of renaming going on in the Microsoft circles. We've obviously talked about Syntex and SharePoint Premium. Viva Engage is effectively just Yammer renamed. So for people that have used Yammer before, that idea of having a kind of like a work kind of social Facebook kind of mechanism that you can start to send out information. You can start to engage employees. You can start to have kind of social areas that you can all interact as well. And then Viva Amplify, so really that's for your kind of internal comms department, and that really lets you reach out and have notifications across multiple channels. So if I'm internal comms and I want to reach out across everybody, there's Outlook, there's Teams, there's intranet. How do I get to them? I can publish one article or one news message and get that sent out across all the different channels, and understand the reach of that, and understand how that comes back, and how that's reaching, how each of these is doing in terms of reach as well. So out of these ones, Viva Connections, I think as I mentioned at the start, is free. Viva Engage is free as well. You can just switch that on if you've got your kind of E3 license, potentially Business Premium as well. Viva Amplify, I believe, is additional cost. And then moving on to the kind of workplace analytics and feedback section. So we've got Viva Insights. So, that effectively, you may have seen some of that. It gives you some personal insights around your kind of collaboration with other people in your team, whether you've been sending emails during meetings, that kind of personal just metrics around how kind of collaborative you're being and how productive you're being, and what your main disruptions are and things like that. So you can go in and see that if you've got that switched on in your organization, you can go in and get those insights every so often. You can see how kind of productive you are and what your kind of main disruptions are. For example, you can see whether you tend to receive emails during times that you're meant to be in Teams calls and other bits and pieces that might be causing some disruption. That I believe is free with your kind of E3 Business Premium license. Viva Glint is a new one which really offers kind of like workplace insights and feedback. So it allows either team managers or directors, whatever, to send out some kind of workplace insights, some employee surveys, and get that feedback across there as well. And then Viva Pulse just allows you to do kind of quick, simple feedback from your teams and get recommended actions and learning outcomes. So Glint and Pulse are quite similar, but Glint is more the kind of enterprise scale across the whole company, getting feedback, whereas Viva Pulse might just be for teams or smaller kind of sets of employees to get some day-to-day kind of week-to-week type feedback. Then you've got Viva Goals. So it's a kind of goal setting and management solution. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to structure your company to organize your kind of objectives and key results, and split that out into a number of different initiatives. And then you can track those objectives and key results and track progress and check-ins against those over a period of time. So if you're setting a strategy for the company, you can set that up in Viva Goals, and then you can track that and track your progress towards that strategy as you move on. That's an additional cost over the kind of just normal E3 or the business kind of premium SKUs as well. And then there's Viva Learning. So in the learning kind of knowledge management section. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to, first of all, it pulls quite a lot of the content from kind of like LinkedIn Learning. So if you already have LinkedIn Learning, you can tie that together with Viva Learning. You also get a portion of that, the free LinkedIn Learning can just tie in. So if you don't have if you're not paying for LinkedIn Learning, then you can get them already, the free stuff off of LinkedIn. You can tie it in with existing learning management systems as well. And what it does is it does the whole kind of like tracking the progress around, what people have learned, how people are learning, the kind of path that people are on as well. One of the key kind of use cases that I've seen being used is if you have, say, like you have a team for project managers, as an onboarding exercise, if somebody new comes into that team and they join that team as a project manager, you can actually put that Viva Learning prompt up to them and say, welcome to the project manager team. Here is the key learning that you need to do as part of your project manager role. And you can kind of curate a selection of courses that you want them to go and do, and then track their progress through that. So they maybe got 3 or 4 courses they want to do. And then once they've done those 3 or 4, that's them effectively done the kind of basic training to get up to speed as like a project manager. So being able to use that in that kind of teams situation is pretty handy as well. It's pretty good. As I say, some of that is free with the E3 and the business premium type SKUs, but some of the other parts are paid. So when you tend to go into kind of integrating with the learning management system, those types of learning where you want to identify roles and be able to allocate that to certain business roles. That's more on the paid for side. Okay, so then just moving forward into a couple of case studies that we've done recently. So work that we've done recently just to try and identify areas where there might be some synergy. So we worked with Scottish Prison Service to migrate all their content across from SharePoint 2013 onto SharePoint Online. And the way that we did that was we approached it kind of business unit by business unit. So we held workshops with each of the business areas to identify what they had just now and what they were looking to do as they moved forward. Basically pulling in quite a lot of what Andy's talked about today around, how to move that structure from that kind of old, SharePoint structure into new hub sites, into new sites, splitting out the security, splitting out the different, types of files as well. And looking at things like SharePoint lists and starting to look at some of the automation that could be possible as well. So we went along each business area to the workshop, wrote up what their site design was going to look like, got that finalised by them, created the site design, and then moved all their content from SharePoint Online into the new site design and mapped that across appropriately. So that was quite a large project for us across a good, maybe a year or so last year. Moved across more than 1 million piece of content over into a number of different business units. And then just the second one was Surrey County Council. So for them, we created a SharePoint intranet across the whole of Surrey's portfolio. That included setting up Viva connections, as I mentioned, just really the stage one, so allowing them to see the intranet through Teams, so that they could then go on and further develop that and build out dashboards and things like that as they wanted to. Again, we had to obviously engage with their team, identify they had an intranet previously, but it was on a third-party platform. So they had to go through all that content, understand how to get that content off of that third-party platform, and then get the content migrated across and build out all the sites and build out all the pages that were needed as well. So that was quite a big job as well. Okay, so that's been a kind of a whistle-stop tour of things kind of SharePoint document management related. I hope it's been useful for you all. If you've got any immediate questions, you can put them in the chat just now. I've seen some questions going into the chat while I've been talking. Otherwise, feel free to reach out after the presentation, or drop us an email. As Zopash said at the start, the slides will be available after the presentation as well. I'll just have a wee quick look through the chat here just to see if there's any questions that didn't get answered, or any questions that are still waiting an answer. So
I just got one hand up, Graham. Federico,
yeah.
I think you mentioned at the start, yeah, but I don't think there's any more questions in the chat just now, unless I've missed any.
I think so. So just the one, we're limited to 300 business premium licenses.
Sorry, of course.
Way of getting more. So yeah, Mandy, I think that's just a limitation on that business premium SKU as such. So the idea is that when you are more than 300, you effectively move to like the enterprise SKUs like the E1, E3, E5. So you would effectively move your business premium licenses onto like E3s, would be the most common SKU to move from there. So they have kind of limited that, the kind of business ones up to that 300 users. And when you need more than 300, the idea is that you go to that kind of enterprise level beyond that. Same issue, speeches by standard and enterprise mobility and security E3. Yeah, so if you've got because you've they made use of some of that mobility and security E3, so anything that's got the E3 is like the enterprise. So that might be a way around it, is to have a mix of business standard and E3s. You don't need to move everybody onto E3s. You could have a mix of the two as well. No, I think Andy maybe answered that one for Leah about centrally moving a site member or owner.
Sorry, Graham, to interrupt you. There's a couple that came in. I think you've probably moved up the chat, haven't you? There's one from Graham. Sorry, not Graham. Greg.
Yeah, Greg,
Mitchell,
and
and
on
then
the
Nicholas as well.
moving from legacy SharePoint to SharePoint Online. I guess we use quite frequently for the biggest migrations. We use a tool called ShareGate. It is quite expensive. If your migration is fairly small, I think the SharePoint built-in migration tool is pretty reasonable. I think the best piece of advice I could give you is to treat every site as a separate migration. Don't attempt to migrate everything at once in one super huge mega migration weekend, because you will find that that big weekend will be subject to constant delays coming in from the more difficult departments. Let's call them, not to name any names, but HR, legal, and finance. So yeah, separate your migration site by site, and if it's really big, ShareGate, consider that if you've got the budget, because it will handle a lot of your errors for you.
Yeah, where ShareGate is really useful is quite often when you're doing a migration, the users want to see what the end result will look like before they then start using it in anger, if you know what I mean. So what ShareGate will allow you to do is set up a migration so that you can effectively map and migrate from whatever the source system was onto the destination system, and then allow those users to go and have a look at it but still work in the old system, and then organise a date with them where you do a final migration. And when you do the second migration, ShareGate's clever enough to understand what the delta is. Yeah. So it'll understand what files have changed, and it'll be able to bring over just the new files as well. So, it's pretty good for that, for larger migrations, as Andy says.
That makes your actual migration is very short time-wise. You're offline for a very short time because the main migration is done. I think the next question was from Nicholas. He says, is there any way to use flows to track reviews and comments on a set of deliverables? I'm going to pass this one to Graham because it's quite hard. I'm trying to think if comments, and you get comments on the comments on SharePoint items. I don't know if is there a Power Automate trigger for that? There might be. I haven't seen it. I've just never used it.
Yeah, so you can do multi-stage reviews. So actually, what you've got with Power Automate is there's an approval center in Teams. So you can then push that. You can create a flow which then pushes something into the approval center in Teams. You can then decide whether that approval needs to be one person, a group of people, whether one person out of the group needs to approve it or everyone in the group needs to do it, and that can be multi-stage as well. And then they can put comments. They could either put comments on the document, they could track changes on the document, they could just be making comments in plain text, but all that kind of gets tagged along with the approval center as well. So that's the way to do it just now. There are some other features coming as part of the SharePoint Premium pack, which are going to give you like a kind of document management type center. So if you think of like a contract, for example, and you're going through and reviewing that contract, it will start to kind of bring some of that SharePoint list functionality in there, where you can see the document and you can see how far through the stages the contract is. You can see whereabouts it is in the process, and then you can start to make other choices based on that as well. So seems your recommendations to build a SP intranet as opposed to using Teams as a single pane of glass and accessing documents. Why? Yeah, so I mean, Teams is great, but underlying Teams is SharePoint. And when you use Teams just without any control, then you don't have any of the labeling, you don't have any of the sensitivity labels, you don't have any of the control. So what we're really looking at is starting from the SharePoint side and building the SharePoint intranet and then the SharePoint kind of team sites. And then that allows you to tap into that from Teams as well and get some of that control and get some of those, all the kind of document templates that you've got, all the retention policies, all the sensitivity policies are then available to you as well. So it's not to say that you can't use Teams. Teams is an essential kind of piece of the puzzle, if you like. But it's just if you're only using Teams, then you're kind of missing a bit of a trick, really.
Could we export only the comments in the document? If there's been comments in the document, can they be extracted and worked with? Good question.
Yeah, if that's been in Microsoft Word and the comments are markup in the document, then you can get a kind of comments view of all the comments there. I'm not quite sure whether you mean as part of a flow
and they
kind of
be
process or
separated
process. Yeah. Yeah, good one from Siobhan there about the cultural change and the staff training. So I think that's a really interesting one to touch on. It's one place that customers always they tend to want the migration and they want the files moved over. But the biggest change, if you like, actually moving the files over is reasonably straightforward on the whole. The biggest part is that kind of cultural change and that kind of staff training, and just bringing people along on the journey. And that's why when we tend to do the migrations, we tend to do them in that kind of business area by business area approach, because we're then involving people in those business areas in what they are going to use eventually. So they feel as though they have a bit of a stake in what they're using, and they get a bit of a say in what they want, and they get to kind of understand some of the features that are available. And so it starts to kind of chunk up some of that, change and some of that kind of training as well. Instead of doing like a big bang where you just move everything across and then you say, right, that's it there, go and start using it. Because it can be a massive change for people depending on what you were using before. So it is key to keep those people on side. It's key to kind of keep kind of catching up with those people, and be available to be able to give them that support and give them that training as well. Okay. The last one from Gavin there. So with off topic, how is a way to restrict users creating teams and channels so as to reduce file fragmentation? Yes. So there's a couple of things you can do there. You can restrict the creation of teams down to an admin function as a suggestion there, so that you need to be an admin to go and create teams and channels. The other thing that we've done quite a lot of is to basically, either within SharePoint or somewhere else, is to create a kind of business justification for why you need a team and create a wee bit of a flow for that as well. So what you do is you effectively fill out a form that says, I need a team and here's the purpose of the team, etc. And that goes to somebody for approval, and then when they approve it, the team just automatically gets generated. So there's not a kind of manual step in the middle. But if you wanted to just, do that kind of manual step, if there was quite a lot of teams being created, you can just go into the Teams admin center and say that only admins can create teams, and that's a quick way of kind of stemming the flow, if you like, of new teams and channels. But quite often people want to move away into that kind of more automated fashion of understanding what's there. So getting a bit of justification for it, dropping it into a SharePoint list so that you can see all the teams, why they were created, who the owner was, who the requester was, and then it goes through that approval process, and then the team just gets created. The other thing that people tend to forget about is what happens at the end of the team as well. So you can put some kind of mechanisms in there to keep teams active. So to say to people, are you still using this team? Do you still need it? And get it switched off after a period of time as well.
You could do a Power Automate bot that could, every 2 years after no one's said anything, it can send them a message saying, "Do you want to keep this?" That would probably work.
So yeah, thanks very much for your attendance, everyone. As we say, the slides and everything will be sent out afterwards as well. And thanks for all the interesting questions as well. Hope you found that useful. Thanks very much.
Thanks, folks.
No, thank you so much. Just a very quick note for myself. Thank you very much to Graham and Andrew for the really insightful presentation. And I'd like to thank you guys for joining us on this session. We hope you found it useful. Just to let you know, we will be sending you a follow-up shortly, so that will have the recording and the slides on there as well for you. We've also got some other events coming up soon. The next one's on cybersecurity. I will put all the details in the chat if you would like to come along to a future session. Yeah, that's pretty much everything for now. You've probably got other things to get on to, other meetings and stuff to attend. So thanks once again, and we hope to see you at a future bridewell webinar. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.